It all started with Johnny Wellington. We were in middle school. I'd worn a white sundress that day, and my hair was tied up in a ponytail. Johnny kissed me on the playground, his lips barely gracing mine for a moment, before he ran off with his friends as they all giggled and poked fun at him. That was my first kiss, and the first time I came to the realization that I was different. The only way I can think to describe it is by saying that the second his lips touched mine, it was almost like they were telling me a silent story. A warning, camouflaged in the form of affection. It was only a flash, but I could clearly see why his last relationship ended with Shelley Frankenworth. She had caught him talking about her in the library. "So, did you kiss her yet?" Jonah asked, leaning against the teen fiction books, his arms crossed over his chest.
"Yeah, and I wish I hadn't,"
Johnny said, shoving his finger down his throat in a barfing motion.
"I don't know what she had for lunch, but she tasted like tuna salad."
On the other side of the bookshelves, Shelley heard him, her hand freezing mid-air. The book she was holding toppled to the ground. A series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket. Ironically, that was a very unfortunate event. She broke up with him the next day and told all the other girls that he had cooties. Cooties were the least of my worries, though. These visions were 10 times worse. I couldn't kiss anyone without being instantly disgusted with them. I never felt the usual fireworks that everyone else did, because my mind was always reminding me why I shouldn't date them. My next kiss was in one of the back corner booths at Chili's. I know, real romantic. Something about their bottomless wings just really sets the mood, you know? I was 15 and he was 16. I remember being a bit tense all throughout the date, knowing that he would probably make a move. We had been on 3 dates now, and although I was still a little unsure about him, I did like him. That was until I kissed him. His lips on mine was what sealed the deal.
"Peter, I just can't do this."
Blonde curls hung limply over her shoulders, her blue eyes watery, and her nose red. A bit of snot coated her upper lip. She had been crying all night. Mascara ran down her cheeks in thin black trails. This poor girl looked like she had been through the ringer. "Come on, Grace. It was an accident." He paced back and forth, his hands carding through strands of auburn hair. "It didn't even mean anything." Grace's arms shook as she crossed them. I could tell that she still loved him, but she wanted to hold her ground. At this point, it looked like a losing battle, her lip trembling and her mind wavering, her sanity hanging on by a thread.
"But it still happened."
She blew out a shaky breath.
"It still happened, and nothing you do or say will change that."
He had cheated on her. The second I pulled back from that kiss, my eyes searched his for a moment, hoping that I would still see the boy from before. But all of that had been tainted, ruined in a matter of seconds. I threw my napkin on the table and dashed out of the restaurant, leaving him to pay the bill. It's the least he could do. he deserved whatever karma he had coming for him. I didn't kiss anyone else until I was 23. Something about those numbers catapulted my biological time clock into action, and I was certain that if I just went on enough dates, I'd find one guy that hadn't screwed up terribly enough for me to stick around. I went on 15 dates before I struck gold. Or at least, that's what I thought. Spencer Lancaster was everything that I wasn't. And that's what initially attracted me to him. He was outgoing, charming, and could work any room that he walked into. He could strike up a conversation with a complete stranger and make it seem like the most natural thing in the world. So, when he reached out to me and asked to go on a date, I jumped at the idea. The date went well, but they always went well, up until they kissed me. We talked about something funny that had happened to him at the grocery store the other day, and laughed about his horrible stash of pickup lines. By the time we had finished our dessert, it was so late that the restaurant practically kicked us out. We shot each other a look as we strolled down the sidewalk, before both of us burst into laughter. "Did you notice the way that lady kept circling our table?" Spencer asked, a lopsided grin spilling out onto his features. "Oh, you mean when she practically stared holes into the back of our heads?" Another giggle bubbled up from my lips. "Pretty sure she wanted us gone like 30 minutes ago." Don't worry about it. I left her a good tip." His shoulder brushed against mine for a second, playfully nudging me. "Handsome and generous," I murmured teasingly. I usually wasn't this open and light-hearted, because I knew what the outcome would probably be. But something about Spencer was just so easy. Liking him was effortless. "You give me more credit than I deserve." His lips tugged up again, perfectly white teeth flashing me a Hollywood smile, as his arm came up to rest around my shoulders, pulling me close. For just a moment, I allowed myself to let my walls down. I leaned into the warmth of his embrace, and for a second, I threw caution to the wind. As we walked around the square, continuing our playful banter, it didn't take us long to notice that all the other shops around us were closing. So, Spencer proposed an idea. "Hey," he said, scratching the back of his neck before shuffling in place a bit. This was the first time I'd seen him even remotely nervous. "I don't mean for this to sound forward, but is there any chance you might want to come back to my apartment for a bit?" I still don't know if it was the 3 glasses of wine, nor the way that he was able to put my mind at ease, but I found myself shaking my head yes, before my brain could even register what I was doing. In fact, all logic had flown out of the window. Spencer's apartment was nice and quaint, and unusually immaculate. In fact, it smelled like he had scrubbed the place down top to bottom with bleach. Now, I know what you're thinking. That should have been your first red flag. Listen, I know. I was stupid and slightly tipsy, and hindsight is 20/20. I couldn't help the way that my nose twisted up when I walked in though, and Spencer was quick to catch on. "Hey, yeah, I apologize for the smell." His hand once again came up to awkwardly rub the back of his neck. I was in a rush to get a stain out of one of my white dress shirts, and spilled almost a whole bottle of bleach in the process. An awkward laugh left his lips, as something akin to embarrassment burned at his cheeks. Let me just pop a window open real quick. He dropped his keys in the bowl beside the door. In the meantime, you can just make yourself at home. I kicked off my heels at the door, treading across the hardwood and plopping down onto one of his couches. Both of them were a light shade of grey. In fact, grey was a reoccurring colour scheme in his apartment, except for the occasional pop of navy. As I waited, I couldn't help but glance around his apartment. Instead of pictures or knickknacks, I was met with strange, abstract pieces of art. One of them was a vase, shaped like a hand. He didn't strike me as the type of man to enjoy the fine arts. But then again, who was I to judge? When he finally strolled back into the room, he nodded towards the fridge and said, "You want some water?" "No, I'm good. Thank you, though." My fingers came up to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear. The open windows were making the apartment a little drafty. As he cracked open the fridge, I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. Something was poking me, and it felt sort of sharp. I reached up under me, digging around until I found the culprit. A shiny gold hair clip stared up at me before it was quickly snatched from my grasp. "Oh, sorry about that." Spencer laughed, tossing it into the little hand-shaped vase. "My sister stayed here for about a week. I'm still finding stuff that she's left behind. Insert red flag number 2. Don't worry about it." I patted the seat next to me and smiled. "Is she younger or older?" The rest of the night was spent talking about our family issues and sharing another bottle of wine. Ironically, not only were Spencer and I the oldest siblings, but both of our mothers believed in the power of the essential oil propaganda. I jokingly told him that bleach would give him cancer, the smell still assaulting my nose from time to time. And he was quick to reply back with, "Well, next time I'll just douse my shirt in lemongrass." I chimed in, giggling. "Oh, but of course. Have you heard that it works wonders?" The corners of his lips tugged up as he watched me laugh even harder. Sometime between all the playful banter, we had grown closer to one another on the couch. Both of us were probably a little more tipsy at this point, and what was flirtation in the beginning transitioned into something else over the course of the night. I think some part of me knew that if I kissed him, I would find something I didn't like. So for the next half hour, I purposely avoided it. Just for once, I wanted to enjoy myself. I wanted to feel something other than disappointment. So when he carried me to his bedroom and hinted at something other than kissing, I was more than game. When I woke up the next morning, I turned over and stretched my arm out across the bed to find that his spot was empty. And then I smelled it. Fresh coffee and something that smelled a whole lot like French toast. My stomach growled as I stood from the bed and looked for my clothes from the previous night. After searching the room, I stopped and blushed, the warmth creeping up my neck and blooming across my cheeks. A memory from last night flashed through my mind. My dress had come off long before we even made it to the bedroom. I was quick to find a solution, my fingers combing through the t-shirts in his closet. Surely he wouldn't mind. My fingers stopped when I landed on one that was pink. The sweater was oversized and embroidered flowers crept up one of the sleeves. With a peek at the tag, I smiled. His sister had good taste. It was a small boutique in town. I slipped it on, padding into the kitchen. Spencer stood at the stove, a spatula in hand, donning nothing other than some grey sweatpants and a hand towel thrown over his shoulder. My arms encircled his waist as I buried my head into his back, kissing the skin between his shoulder blades. A small chuckle left his lips. "Hungry?" "Starving," I replied, standing up on my tiptoes to teasingly bite his shoulder. "Hey now, it's kiss the cook, not bite him." Spencer placed the spatula on the countertop as he swiftly spun around and pressed his lips to mine, his hand coming up to cup my cheek, successfully locking me in place. "Please, please don't do this," her voice begged, as strangled sobs broke free from trembling lips. "You've seen too much." Spencer peered down at the girl, a maniacal gleam in his eye, as he pinned her to the couch. "I promise." The girl stuttered over her words. I won't tell anyone." "That's what the last one said, and she almost got me in trouble." Spencer was quick to search the room before his eyes landed on a pillow. "Leah, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to make that mistake again." The girl thrashed and screamed, her fists flying up to smack him in the face. I heard him curse under his breath as blood dripped from his nose and landed on the collar of his white button-down. Anger flared within him as he tried to restrain her. But whoever she was putting up one heck of a fight. As I moved closer, a silent spectator to the events that unfolded, I held a hand over my mouth and gasped. A golden hair clip was tugged from her hair, shoved in between the couch cushions as he held the pillow over her face. Fear surged through me as I watched her struggle. I wanted her to live, to fight, but some part of me already knew how this was going to go. A few seconds later, and I was right. When he pulled the pillow away, I froze. A pink, oversized sweater with embroidered flowers on one of the sleeves stared back at me. "Natalie. Hey, are you okay?" Spencer glazed down at me, his brows furrowed, concern etched into his features. "Did I lose you there for a second?" I stumbled away from him, bent over, and puked all over the floor. Tears blurred my vision as I gripped the countertop. Everything around me was spiraling out of control. "Stay right here. I'm going to run to the bathroom and grab some towels. It's going to be okay." The second he stepped out of the room, I grabbed my purse from the table next to his front door and took off running down the street. I wasn't wearing pants or shoes, and I'm sure my hair was a rat's nest. But all I cared about was getting home. When I finally made it back to my apartment, my feet were raw and my mouth tasted of acid. I'd thrown up 3 more times on the way. The second I locked the door, I wiggled out of the sweater, ripping it over my head and tossing it to the ground. I paced my apartment for a good hour before I finally placed the phone call. I had to. Every time I looked at that crumpled mass of pink lying in a heap on the floor, something inside of me churned, twisting and curling and choking me until I could barely breathe. 911, what's your emergency? I sat there for a moment, trying to collect my thoughts. How in the world could I say this in a way that made sense? Hello, 911, what's your emergency? I don't... I started, struggling to push the words past my lips. Excuse me? Could you say that again? I'm having trouble understanding you. I knew how it would sound, but before I could stop myself, it was too late. Every time I kiss someone, I see how their last relationship ended. My hands shook as I fought to hold the phone steady. This time, I witnessed a murder.
Hello, Sinister listeners. If you've enjoyed this story, then you'll find all the author's information in the description below. For more content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to succumb to the sinister.